This is The Fabulist. I'm Joel Pilger, and I'm diving deep into the intersection of creativity and commerce with little more than my curiosity and a microphone. Along with my generous collaborators at Coop Studios, I'm traveling the world to gather all the insights that studio leaders need but are way too busy to grasp. We're talking to the motion makers, the fable finders, the storytellers. If you're running a disruptive enterprise in motion or animation, live action, sound or music, experiential, I'm here to celebrate you for not merely participating in the industry, but for reinventing it. Because the future isn't just coming at us, it's being created. So let's get after it. You know, one thing I'm looking forward to is you and I someday hanging out in person.
Yes. Huh?
Because you and I are having this weird experience that so many humans have nowadays called virtual. It's like all on Zoom and wherever. And I know there's going to be a moment when maybe I'm hosting one of my dinners or something, and you're going to be there and we're both going to have that moment in 3D. Have you had this moment?
What I had it with Amanda where it's like, oh, like we're like kind of best friends. Hi. Hi. Nice to meet you.
And you're like, wow, you look the same, but not in person, in real life?
100%. Yeah.
Well, Amanda at Cream is, wow, talk about a good soul. And I think that's actually how you and I, in a roundabout way, how we got connected, right?
Yeah, she's absolutely the person that was like, oh, you should meet Joel. Let me introduce you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda. We love you.
Cream. So, dude, this is what I've been thinking about is I watched your talk at, what was the conference?
Making Midwest.
Making Midwest. And what was the title of that talk?
Breaking the Cycle of Creative Exploitation.
Oh, okay. Wow. That very much feeds into something I was going to ask you, because when I watched that talk, I realized, oh, like me, Kevin is a creative. Right? He's a creative person, right? Is how we use that word. And I kind of heard in your story and what you shared that this journey that we're all on as creative people and in business is beautiful, but also somewhat tormented.
It absolutely is.
And I'm sort of curious to ask, like, what's been the overall of your journey? And why do we creatives get taken advantage of? What is up with this thing called the creative life?
The creative life is one that has a lot of dichotomies. And I think it is maybe simultaneously the best career in the world and the worst career in the world for the exact same reason. And that is because we love what we do. We are passionate about this work. And it is not just a job to us. It is a core part of who we are. And so when this job is great, it's the best feeling in the world. You know what I mean? You are riding high on the universe because you're not just successful in your career. You feel like you have leveled up as a person. You feel like you have become something special when you have achieved high in a creative career. But when this job is bad, it's not just a bad day at the office. It can feel like a core part of your being is devalued. A core part of who you are gets missing. And I think that is a core part of why creatives are so likely to get taken advantage of and so likely to get exploited. Because we love what we do. We want to be the best at it. We want to achieve high. And because we are not just trying to make money, we're trying to achieve something within ourselves to become something different. We are willing to take things that are inherently exploitative. We are willing to do labor for free. I think doing labor for free is inevitable in the creative field. At some point, you will be doing work for exposure bucks, or you will be pitching to win that client. Like, there's just no way to avoid it when working in the creative field. At some point in your career, you're going to do it.
Yeah, it's a matter of time. So here's a theory. Let me float this past you and you just tell me agree or disagree. I find that creating is a very human activity. Like part of what it means to be a human is to create. And therefore, as creatives who have careers, lives built around this thing we call creating, I find that it's part of our identity. It's literally how we view ourselves and move through the world is through this lens called I am a creative, I am a creator.
Yep.
And is this part of why when we live this creative life as a career, as a business person, that when it doesn't go well, it's not just a bad day at the office?
Yeah, you're 100% right. I think it's really challenging to be a creative and navigate the world of business, because business is going to be in black and white and creative is going to be in all sorts of different shades of gray. And those things inherently come into conflict in a lot of different ways. And the emotional toll that it pays on the creative is something that really stacks up over time. And I think it feeds into something that I think is the biggest lie that I've ever been told, which is if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't know if you've ever heard that old truism, but that old chestnut came up with me in the creative field for a long time. And no matter what, work is work. I'm sorry, it is. Like, you will never go through a career without having bad days or bad seasons or bad years. You can't avoid it, because work is volatile. And when you take this thing that you're passionate about, the volatility of business can erode the joy. That thing that you love to do, the realities of business and the realities of the day-to-day can take that joy away and can ultimately turn this thing that is a core part of who you are into something that is sour. And I think we see a lot of creatives who have been through the shit and have been through it for a long time. And you see that joy get eroded and that desire to create get lessened.
I'm guessing you will gladly join me on this mission. Is I've always felt like one of the reasons it's exciting to share with the next generation that's coming up and teach them about pricing, negotiating, right? Pitching, all these things, is I want to actually give the next generation that's coming up permission to recognize their value, charge for it, because if they don't do that, they kind of just make it miserable for everybody else because they're 100%. Doing the work for free. And the current generation is like, hey, we're trying to run businesses here, right? You guys that are undercutting us actually are cutting your own throats.
Yep.
You're making it worse for everyone. So I think we can all agree that the more we put this out there, the more we educate, the better off better everyone's going to be.
Maybe this is a little binary, but I think there are two ways to kind of approach hardship, right? Where you have gone through hardship and you've gotten to a place of success, and you have kind of two different ways you can go. You can say, that is the only way that you can learn. And so I'm going to keep those barriers in place so that other people get that tough, thick skin that I have. Or you have the opportunity to let the ladder down for somebody else so that you make it easier for them to get up to the top. And that is the philosophy that I believe is the correct way to live. That is something that is an important mission for me.
Okay, so speaking of mission, let's introduce Kevin to anyone that doesn't already know you, okay? Because you've blown up on LinkedIn over the past 6 months, I feel like. And I'm like, everybody kind of knows Kevin. But for anyone who doesn't know you, hi, Kevin.
Hi, Joel.
Who are you? What do you do? What's your jam?
I'm just a little dweeb from Columbus, Ohio that says stuff on the internet, and apparently a couple people like it. So my background is as a motion designer. I started in this industry almost 2 decades ago, working at studios learning the ropes of being a creative and eventually evolving into a creative leader, and worked my way up the studio pipeline until I made a transition almost 10 years ago now, seven-ish years ago, where I transitioned from the studio world to the in-house world. And particularly on the hyper growth startup side of the client side, which was a very unique animal. And that's where I really learned a lot about the industry in ways that I don't think a lot of people get access to, because it wasn't just about the creative. How can I execute the brief that I'm given with the most creative ambition and technical excellence in order to make a happy client? I learned, oh, how do I deliver value to a business with my own creative abilities that's going to deliver outcomes that the company is trying to achieve? And over the past 2 years, I have kind of jumped ship and for the first time in my career, done my own thing. I'm normally what I would consider a very risk-averse person, and being an entrepreneur was never something that I ever wanted, but I felt like I had really, for the first time in my career, felt empowered, that I had a true understanding of what my own unique value was. So I started my own agency just a little over 2 years ago. It's called Ultra Friends, and I recently have partnered up with my best friend and business partner, Travis McCleary, who is a former design director at Twitter and product designer from Netflix. And the two of us work with brands to help them figure out how to systemize and operationalize creative in a way that delivers more value for a creative investment.
Cool. So if I'm understanding you correctly, in terms of what you're doing now, a brand might engage you, your team, Ultra Friends, to help guide we have a problem, we need to launch a product.
Yep.
We need help getting all of our creative efforts aligned towards producing a certain outcome, and this is what success looks like. Kevin, can you help us?
Yep.
And you work with in-house and out-of-house resources? How does that work?
Yeah, 100%. So Travis and I are the creative directors and strategists that help manage the work. And then we pretty much outsource everything else, where we'll bring in contractors or even smaller studios that can help us achieve the outcomes that we're trying to help our clients achieve. And it works in a lot of different ways. So there's some companies where we are essentially their creative department. So like we are essentially a fractional creative department. Fractional is a very popular word these days, especially on LinkedIn.
Yeah, sure.
So we're essentially a partner for them that they will say, here's our initiatives and objectives that we're trying to achieve this month. And then we recommend the creative solutions that help them achieve those objectives. And then there's sometimes where we'll just have a client say, hey, we need an explainer video. And then we say, I'm sure that's what you think you need. Let's dive deeper and find out what outcomes you're trying to achieve. And we can help recommend a solution that is more tailored towards what's actually going to help you achieve those outcomes.
What were some of your biggest learnings going from the studio side to the in-house creative department, if you will?
When you come up in the studio pipeline, you are measured on the creative. Your creative ambition and your technical execution are pretty much the two things that you are measured on. I think even a lot of times when you are working with a client, the only time you know if it's successful is if the client came back. Like you're never really given any metrics. You're never really given the opportunity to pivot and adjust and make creative recommendations for how they could change the outcomes of what we delivered last time. It's just like, okay, that thing happened. We liked working with you. Here's another one. So you have a hard time learning what actually works on the ways in which the client measures success. And so I think the biggest thing that I learned was how clients were actually measuring the effectiveness of the creative that I developed. And I learned how to make the creative decisions that were affecting those outcomes and those metrics in ways that the C-suite recognized the value of creative. So one of the first things that I tested was a big brand film, the way that I have launched hundreds of brands over my career, right?
Like the classic manifesto video.
The classic manifesto. We've all done them. And I felt really great about the video that we produced and was ready to see the results, and it tanked. It just did not convert the way that we were hoping it would. And as we got to kind of analyze what was happening, we started to recognize the thing that we thought was really unique about the product was not resonating with consumers. And so it was kind of back to the drawing board to say, okay, so what about this unique product that is very differentiated in the space is the thing that we can kind of hang our hat on? What is the narrative that we can really use to resonate with customers? And so we took the same kind of investment that we put into the big brand launch film and then just tried testing a bunch of different things. Tried different audiences, different messages, different themes, different execution styles, and just kind of took a shotgun approach to testing creative. And that gave us some really unique learnings. We found the things that were rising to the top and found the things that weren't really hitting with customers. And from there, we were able to scale. We were able to say, okay, we're essentially focus testing things by putting them in the market and letting the market help feed us with information and data of the messages that were resonating and converting audiences. It was an amazing experience. And I think a lot of creatives feel like they're not equipped to have those conversations. They're like, I'm not an agency. I can't give strategy advice, because they feel like it's this big nebulous thing that they don't have the credentials for. Here's the thing. You have common sense. You do. And when a client comes to you and says, hey, we want to make this exciting social video that's going to be 5 minutes, you have the cognition to say, look, I don't have exactly all the data on this, but you're probably not likely to get people to watch a video on social media that's 5 minutes long unless it's really compelling. How about we make recommendations for you for how you can tell this story in bite-sized chunks, or how we can find a way to fit your narrative into 15 seconds and then have that link to the longer video that you want to share, right? Like, we already have these abilities to make common sense recommendations.
Yeah. Follow that curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, what if we're wrong, right? This might be a dumb question, but why do we think that's going to work?
Yep.
And a lot of times what I find is the client, right, the person on the buyer side, doesn't want to look stupid or foolish. But when you start to be vulnerable, ask better questions, it's like suddenly everybody starts to say, that's actually a really good question. I don't know why this is going to work.
Yeah.
What do you think? And you say, yeah, I'm not sure that's going to work either. Let's be curious and start asking other questions that'll move us forward.
It's funny because I think curiosity, that exact value that you have espoused here, is exactly one of the greatest things that you can have as a creative. And it's something that we naturally already have a lot of. I think a lot of us, when we're given a new industry and we're like, ooh, I want to learn more about this so that I can accurately represent it, I like to come at it from that position of curiosity, where I say, okay, my hypothesis is that for the problem that you're trying to solve, this is the right creative initiative that we can develop. And here's why I think it will be successful. And I'm pretty loose at first. I start off with like, here's a couple of hypotheses that I have, and we can dive deeper on the ones that you think are reasonable to test. And sometimes that leads to clients not buying one concept, but buying multiple of them, because they're like, yeah, those are all reasonable things that I think could be successful. Let's start here, but down the line, let's explore this and explore this, because guess what? There are a lot of ways to solve a problem like converting clients. Like there are a lot of ways to solve the problem of conversion. And when you just say, okay, here's my one concept of why this is going to work, or here's my 3 concepts, pick one, I feel like we limit ourselves by being uncurious.
We don't have to pretend to have all the answers.
Yep.
We can say, let's just ask better questions and go find those answers.
I think the ways in which we present creative strategy as studios typically is insecure. I don't think we feel confident in the concepts that we give them a lot of the time. I think we go, this is what we think is going to be cool, and don't really have the reasoning behind why it's going to help them achieve what it's going to achieve. It's giving them the reasons why it's going to look cool and the reasons why we like it. But I don't think we have a lot of the security to say, this is why this is going to work for you. And when you have a more humble mindset, when you come back at this and say like, okay, I don't know for sure what's going to work, but I have a reasonable guess that this will, and I'm going to give you some reasons why. I feel like it takes away some of that imposter syndrome, because you're not saying like, this is the one, this is the thing that's going to do it. You're saying, I believe this will work. Here's my reasoning behind why. Let's talk about what you think is going to be the most successful thing of these options and explore what our path forward is. I think it's an inherently more humble place to come at the work, and it leaves yourself open to so much possibility. I just think it's a much better way to present yourself.
I'm thinking as we go through our careers, like in my case as a studio, when we started doing 6-figure commercials and even 7-figure rebrands or campaigns, and you're dealing with a CMO whose career is on the line at all times.
Yep.
That for you to go in and pitch a CMO and be like, yeah, I think this idea is really cool. They are investing probably tens of millions of dollars on a media buy.
Yeah.
They're probably paying you $1 million to actually execute the dang thing. And if you're wrong, heads will roll.
Yes.
And I think this is where curiosity is so important, because if I go to that CMO and say, you know what, I don't have all the answers, but I'm curious and I have a hypothesis, how can we test this? How can we incrementally prove that this is a great idea? That's, I think, a very, like, if I'm the buyer, if I'm that CMO, I'm going to say, Kevin, wow, thank you. Thank you. You obviously have my back. I trust you. Let's do this.
Yeah, because you're not just saying, okay, let me figure out how I can sell them on the thing I am trying to convince them that they should buy. And instead, you're coming at it from a different angle and saying, how can I set you up to win? How can I use my creative abilities to work within the system that you are inhabiting and set you up to be successful?
This is a bit of a leap, but you'll totally track with me here. You and I both have this big belief that the future is working brand direct. Why is the future brand direct if you're a studio or if you're a production company?
So I think there are a number of reasons why. I think starting with the macroeconomic trends of the way advertising has gone. More content for smaller overall budgets is the way that we have seen this industry trending over the past 20 years. And that comes from a lot of different factors that are playing into that. There are more and more distribution channels every day, which means that we need to be more nimble with the amount of deliverables that are created for every single campaign. And the budgets are not increasing to account for that increase in deliverables. So we're going to spend a couple $100,000 on one spot that maybe has a few cut downs is something that is limited to a couple of brands. Your Nikes, your Apples, sure. Those campaigns will still exist, but those are probably going to very specific directors and very specific kinds of studios. So if you're an average studio, I think you have probably been feeling the squeeze over the past, 10 years. If you've been around, you've been seeing the nature of, the same type of project that I used to do 10 years ago has decreased in budget by 25, 50%. So being able to just be an executor of agency work is going to be difficult because I think the agencies are really struggling to exist in that macroeconomic environment. I think they are struggling to be able to pivot to deliver what brands need today. But that leaves opportunity for studios to come in and fill that gap with more strategic recommendations about how brands can stretch their dollars to get more value. I really, truly believe that production people are the kinds of leaders that brands need today. I think that is the biggest opportunity for studios in what is right now a very challenging market to position themselves to be better partners and to have more lasting relationships and more long-lasting studios.
Okay, so you just said the magic word about positioning, and you totally teed me up to ask this question. When it comes to how studios position and communicate, they're trying to break into brands. Where are they blowing it?
Yeah. That, I think the biggest problem is that they are not demonstrating the value of what they bring to the table. I think so much communication and positioning that comes from studios and comes from creatives in general. I don't think this is just a studio problem. So many creatives talk about what they think is cool about what they do. We're award-winning storytellers. We're passionate about the work. Like, I think we can all write the agency and studio bio off the top of our heads. The about us, yep. We can all write it right here and we know exactly the terminology that it would use. And a lot of that terminology is trying to demonstrate value. They use words like award-winning because they don't have ways to demonstrate credibility. So they're like, awards will demonstrate that we're good. They'll use words like, we're full-service agency because they don't have an idea of what problem they solve. And they can't truly articulate what they do. So they're just going to use blanket words that sound good, that are like, hey, just throw us creative and we'll do it. So I think the thing that we're blowing it on is being direct and unique about how we position the value of what we do. Because I think you can quantify the value of storytelling, but no one does. We just say we're storytellers. But if you talk about storytelling a little bit, right? Like if you say, yeah, I understand the channels of today and I understand how to format storytelling so that it stops a scroll. And I'm going to keep their attention past the 6-second ad button, right? That is how story is going to deliver you value because I'm going to get you better brand awareness. I'm going to get you better conversions because I know how to package a story and package the formula of story in a way that's going to make your content more digestible to viewers today.
Yeah, so, I was like, if I was a production company, I could easily see having some sort of anthemic statement that says, let's tell stories to stop the scroll. And as a buyer, I'm like, wait, I'm curious, which is very different than the thing that says, we are the full service award-winning storytelling production company, which is like, I don't know why I would pick that over the 100 others that just said the same thing with the word salad rearranged a different way. All right, so this is like a little side note question to this thing about working direct with the brands. There's a trend right now that everyone's calling in-housing.
Sure.
And most studios and production companies cringe when they hear this term because they think, oh no, the work's all, quote, going in-house. I'm curious because I have a theory that says shouldn't be afraid of that at all. What say you?
No, absolutely. I think you should be excited that there are people going in-house, because that means that they are making a greater investment in creative, right?
Right.
They value creative enough that they're bringing people in to help manage it. And a lot of the times that means that they are still going to need expert partners to help them facilitate the work. Like, yes, I went in-house. I went from I'm like the exact type of person that they're worried about existing. I went from a studio, an agency environment, and I went in-house, but I also hired a bunch of freelance creatives. I hired a bunch of studios to help us execute the work, because I couldn't do everything. My team couldn't do everything. There was always overflow, and there was always things where we required a specialty skill set that someone was going to bring to the table. The thing you should be afraid of is having such a generic website or such generic messaging that you can't stand out in the crowd for why a person like me would say, "Ooh, I would love to work with Studio X." Because if you can't attract me to say, okay, I have overflow, or I need somebody that really does this really well, if you're not able to communicate the core value other than you're a full service agency, hey, we can do whatever, you're going to have a hard time convincing somebody like me to say, all right, like, let's see what you can bring to the table.
And let's also just make a little note here that having a great portfolio of work, of course, is necessary, but those are table stakes, right? Like, of course you produce great work. That's not why I choose my agency partner. It's you, of course, produce great work, but you stand out and you've clearly articulated your value and made me curious about what might it be like for us to work together and go produce an awesome result together.
Yeah. Think of that like a resume, right? Like, look, they do great work. There's somebody that has, big brands on their label, right? But then there's the job interview. The job interview is where you're going to have to say, yeah, those portfolio pieces that I have, here's why they make me this person that brings this value to the table that is going to enhance what you need and is going to bring something unique to your team and to your brand and to your results. If you're not able to clearly communicate that message, I think you are going to struggle with getting business results getting business development, just because they just don't know what you can help them with. And if you can't drive the conversation, if you don't know yourself what your value is, you're never going to be able to convince somebody else what it is.
Man, I'm going to wrap us up. I'm so grateful that you accepted my invitation to be a resident expert inside Forum, because people there are able to pick your brain, and it's been awesome. But I also appreciate you just being a generous soul that you're sharing, like today here on the podcast and with everybody on LinkedIn. So if people want to follow you, get in touch with you, be a part of what you're doing, can you give us some links, some pointers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an old man. So like the best way to get in touch with me is on LinkedIn. That is my social presence. So like, get on board, baby. I am just an old man who doesn't understand TikTok, right? But you can also, if you are a member of Forum, you can also reach out, and I have been answering some questions about how to work brand direct. So if you are a member of Forum, you should absolutely utilize me as a resource there. And if you're not, like, why aren't you? What's wrong with you? Duh, get on that.
Yes, I'll include links to all the above. Kevin, thank you, friend. As you say, thank you, pal. I appreciate you so much. And thanks for being such a strong advocate for the creative, right? And this creative journey. I appreciate you inspiring me and all of us, right, to find our place in the world and understand our value.
Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you saying that. And it's something that I think is really important, because creative shapes every part of this society that we live in. We shape industry, we shape culture, we shape the way information is consumed. That is the power of creative, it's the power of narrative, but we see that skill set and those people being devalued systemically. And I think it requires loud voices to advocate for what we do and advocate for the power of it so that all of us can get what we deserve in a good way.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to my collaborators at Coop Studios. To learn more about them, visit coopstudios.com. As for you, if you're focused on running a strong and thriving creative company, consider joining Forum, my private network of the world's leading studios. For details, go to joelpilger.com.